something about you that I can't help but smile when you smile and laugh when you laugh. Something surrounds you.
Hello and welcome to the Human Intimacy Podcast. I'm MaryAnn Michaels here with Dr. Kevin Skinner, and we are so glad to have you joining us both on YouTube and on audio. And today we are picking up where we left off in our last podcast. Our last podcast, we were talking about some of the communication that happens between us and our emotions and how to repair and how to notice where we're at in like what our state is when we are trying to communicate. Those are some of the overall things we were talking about in our last podcast. And so we're picking up today, jumping right back in.
Let's start off, MaryAnn. As we ended last time, we were in the middle of a fight in this coupleship, right? They were in a fight, and one of them is asking for a timeout.
So, Dr. Skinner, you were talking about one of us might be like in this hurricane place. You were talking about some climates, how we might be really reactive, really hurt. The one partner is saying, hey, hold on a second. I want to respond to you, but I'm not in a great place because I'm hitting shame. I'm hitting fear. My rejection stuff are kicking in. And so I can't give you a good answer or response. I can't show up well right now.
Yeah, and that part, what you just said, most people skip that part and say, look, I don't want to talk about this right now. So what you just said is we can't skip over that part either, is the awareness to say both partners, if either one of us are triggered, calling a timeout is a positive thing to do.
Yeah.
We set a parameter, a time parameter. Hey, can I take 20 minutes? Can we talk about this tonight when I get back? Or can we do this after lunch? Right? So we are setting a time parameter, which many couples don't do. And it leaves the person who was pursuing the conversation feeling like, oh, here we go again. You're just ignoring me. You don't want to talk about issues.
Oh, I'm so glad you said that, because it might be, no, I'm ready right now. I'm invested. I have time. And I don't want to talk about it after a kid's soccer game. Then I need to do laundry. I need to get ready for tomorrow. And I don't want to come here again. And that's a normal reaction.
And so we have somebody who's pursuing the conversation, somebody who's distancing from the conversation. What do? Well, if you're in an emotional state of mind where you're flooded, again, generally speaking, 100 heartbeats per minute or more, that generally is the concept of being flooded. So if we're there and we're escalated, our tone of voice, our body language, everything is going to be usually more intense.
All right, so slow that down for just a second. How do I know if my heart beats above 100?
You're going to feel it in your body if you're paying close attention. Your pitch of your voice will be typically higher, angrier. It will also be you if you attune to your body. In fact, I've had people do this. I actually, in my office, I'll have them, if they have some kind of a watch that tracks their heart rate, I'll say, okay, just real quick, what is it? I had this experience the other day where there was a lot of intensity in a session I was dealing with, and I actually looked at my own just to see where my heart rate was during this conversation, because I'm trying to be attuned to them, and I'm actually trying to help them to regulate. And that's a really hard space. Regulation is how we have effective communication. And when we can't regulate our communication, of our body's disposition is either going to be fight or flight.
So what do you mean when you say regulate?
So 3 or 4 things when I regulate. That's what I'm doing, trying to get my heart rate back down so I can communicate more effectively. So from a physiological perspective, I'm going to take a time out so I can get my emotions in check and also have the awareness of what I'm actually feeling. So when couples get to the point where they are elevated, oh, here you go again, that in and of itself is a hurtful communication. Oh, here you go again. In contrast with what we were saying in the last episode, is being able to take a time out and step back.
And right there, just that comment itself, here you go again, just like that can drive a heartbeat right up. Oh, yeah. So my partner just said, here you go again. And now I've got this flood of emotions, and it might mean, oh, we're never getting there, and they're in a defensive place, or whatever it means. I might have a physiological reaction just because of something my partner says instantly.
And so I'm triggered. Here you go again. I'm already triggered. That's probably going to trigger you too.
Yeah.
So If I have that kind of awareness, like, look, where we're headed isn't going to be very effective right now. Would it be okay if we took a 15-minute, 30-minute timeout, which we've pre-agreed to? In other words, we both can take a timeout as long as we do a couple things. We have a time frame and we don't go get bigger emotional guns.
Okay, so hold on. You're saying this is like house rules. We have a pre-agreed upon when either of us get to this place in our coupleship, we have a pre-arranged, pre-agreed upon. If I need to take a time out for us to be effective, if either of us do, then we will, and we'll come back.
Yes, that's
Okay.
right. The reason why is because when you're in a calmer state, you can make agreements if you're willing to agree to them and live by them in that difficult situation. Now, earlier you gave a scenario where I don't want to do it after the soccer meet because I'm here right now with the energy. If your spouse is not in a space where they're going to be effective, you're going to get hurt by their inability to respond. Well, fine, if you want to. Now I'm defensive already because my position is I'm not ready for this conversation. The point is, if you're not ready for a conversation, you probably need to give each other a timeout for the benefit of your relationship.
And I can see how frustrating that is because I might want to say, no, you're here right now. We're doing this right now. No.
Buck up, let's go, buddy.
Yeah. Like, I want to get this resolved. This is a conflict. It's on the table. I might have to really recognize once again that word regulate. I don't know that it means this, but in my mind, it's kind of like, let me get back to regular. Let me get back to my normal because right now, if I'm so frustrated and so focused on getting this on the table, I'm not going to be able to hear you.
So here's another part of this. How I do that timeout and how I ask for it, I can actually be effective or I could be very ineffective. I'll give you both responses.
Okay.
Look, I'm going to tell you right here and now. If you want to talk with me, I'm not going to be able to solve this, so you better back off.
Sorry, that would not be, I'm not role playing very well here. You did that so well, Dr. Skinner. Yeah. Okay.
I've seen
Yeah.
that. I've seen that a few times in my career, right?
Yeah.
Contrast that with, look, I know this is an important topic to you, and I know it'd be nice right now. I'm feeling inside incapable, and I care about you and our relationship. If I could have a few minutes, if you give me the afternoon to think about this, I'm going to be way more effective because this is important. I want to be there for you, and I really do. Could you give me a few hours to just really contemplate what's happening inside of me when you say that? I really want to be there.
I want to just observe, Dr. Skinner. Partway through that, I noticed you took a big breath.
Really?
And I think as you do that, just as we begin, I really want to be here. Like taking those deep breaths in that moment help us to regulate. They help signal our body, hey, I'm not under attack. But
Yeah.
even halfway through, I heard and noticed that breath. And we need to recognize I got to breathe here. I got to take a pause. I got to take a breath. I got to slow things down. And you did that
Yes.
so well.
And my hope is that besides the breath, that the communication is validation, right? I want to do this. I want to do it right. I'm not in a space. And if we both can honor that, we've got a time frame. Give me a few hours. And the research shows that when we're flooded, it takes at least 20 minutes to regulate, to
So,
be in an emotional state where I'm not in fight or flight response. That's really what regulation means is I'm not in fight or flight response. I'm more likely to be able to access the prefrontal cortex of my brain where I'm able to have more processing going on so I can be a part of an effective communication.
okay, I'm going to bring this back to our previous podcast where we were talking about in tricky situations where we might freeze. 80% of us do, 10% mess it up, 10% are effective. If I'm in this space, you said that so well, but if I'm in that space, I'm probably not going to have those great Dr. Skinner words. I'm probably not going to have, oh, I can take a breath, but I'm not going to maybe have all those words because I'm frozen. My brain doesn't know how to do this. And all I know is I've got all this stuff going on inside of me. And so, if that's the case for our listeners or those who are viewing this, I think it's important to also be able to say, what is a phrase that I can use that's simple, that maybe it's once again something pre agreed upon with my partner, that when I say, I need to take a break, that my partner knows if I say I need to take a break, it means I'm coming back. It's a 20-minute break. It's something that we've pre-established because I might not have those words in that moment.
Which really is, I need to do the evaluation and prepare for those moments because we know we're going to have them. So those were my words. What are your words? Do the work, do the evaluation, and find your words of how to deal with those moments in an effective way with kindness, with caring. Because the concept, the words don't matter. It's the principle, right? I do care. I want to solve this. You matter, right? Every one of those things are concepts that show validation, caring, commitment. My tone of voice matters. My body language matters. So all of those things come into the equation here. So many times people say, can I just say what you said? And I said, no, you're missing the whole point. It's not my words. It's what I'm trying to get across, that I care, you matter, value. And that's where I see us breaking down, because you can give a rote response.
Mhm.
It needs to be from your heart.
It does. And once again, when we freeze in those moments, because one of the things that's been helpful for some of my clients, we've said, write it down on an index card and put it in your back pocket. Carry it around with you. Because in that moment, I've had clients say, I don't have any words. I practice this, I planned this, I just don't have it. And so whether you take a picture of it or it's on your phone, or whether it's in your back pocket or you've got it somewhere, but being able to say, yeah, I just did some pre-work just because this might come up, and here's what I need to say in a way that here's my words that I want to say.
Yeah, and there's that frozen state, right? I'm frozen, I don't know what to do. Well, don't be, if you're afraid to bring out a piece of paper, even that communication of, look, I've thought about this, and this is how I do these moments because I want to get it right. Again, that's where couples, like, it's like training wheels. Maybe that's the best way to say it. It's like, I'm practicing, I'm doing the best I can because I want to solve this with you. I want to. And so I might need my training wheels. Here's what my words. Well, great. That means you're trying. So if you're the person who's communicating with the person with a piece of paper, be patient with them, because it's their effort to show that they're trying.
And let me add with that, I think it's important to, if we're taking that break, to use the words. It can be so threatening. We use the word triggering a lot. It can be triggering or threatening when our partner says, I need a break. I need to step away. It can feel like an abandonment. And if we've had abandonment in our past, in our history, oh, that feels like the worst thing ever. And so I might want to fight. No, 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 no. Stay here. No, we can't, because I feel like you're abandoning me if you go away from this. Or our pattern might have been in the past, we never ever resolve anything. So I don't want you to walk away, because it just means it won't ever get resolved. And so being able to use the words, I'm not leaving this. I'm not
Mm.
leaving you, and I'm coming back to it. If we can use those words, our partner can go, okay, okay. And this is a great way to build trust. If I'm trying to build trust with my partner, I come back. I do what I say that I was going to do, and I show up again and I re-engage.
Yeah, and that's preparation. It requires preparation. Again, I've said this over and over during this podcast for the last year plus time. If we aren't prepared at difficult emotional moments, we're not going to succeed, because our emotions naturally go to fight or flight response. We're inviting you as a couple to speak from your prefrontal cortex, which allows you to think through things, evaluate consequences, evaluate your own emotions, because you're more in tune with yourself. That's what we're inviting you to do. And that's something that every one of us has to practice. I have the problem, MaryAnn, I'm going to assume you do as well, that we can easily get hijacked or flooded ourselves.
Yes, but Dr. Skinner, you didn't say the words. Proper preparation prevents a pound of pain.
Oh, I was waiting for you to do it for me. So yes, proper preparation prevents a pound of pain.
That's what we're talking about.
All right, so now let's take it to the next step.
Okay, so now
And we're apart.
okay.
What do you do while you're apart? I'm going to tell you what most of my clients do in the beginning before I get a chance to interrupt the pattern. They go get the bigger gun. Well, I should have said this, should have said that. Well, man, they did this. Oh, they're just, and I might even add people into it. I might call up a friend. Hey, did you know my, right? And so I might invite other people into this conflict because I'm so upset.
Is that bigger gun maybe a space where we're just needing to air and validate where we're at, where we're
What we're
trying to
feeling.
verbally process what's going on and make sense of it. And we need to say it out loud. And, but yeah, I mean, that bigger gun, that's an interesting concept. Why do we do that?
I have my theories. I don't think one of them's right. I think there's probably many potential theories, but one of my primary ones is I need validation that I'm right and my partner's wrong.
Yeah. Because I'm trying to make sense of my reality and my perception. And this is how I've seen it out and build up my ammunition to prove my.
And so I can go talk with other people and say, "Can you believe this?" And they'll go, "Oh, wow. Oh, your spouse is off." Right. And so now I've built a team. Boy, that is sure destructive to the relationship because now I'm turning other people against my spouse as well. And again, I understand that we need someone to vent with, but that person needs to be neutral and not, "Oh, boy, I couldn't stay in your marriage."
Yeah. And this is where I believe that sponsors and support groups can be really healthy. Yeah. They can be really helpful. It's not my friend, it's not my family member, it's not the person that I'm going to a barbecue with next week. And so I might be in a better place, but my friend now might be like, "Oh, he's such a jerk. Holy cow." Like and carrying that because they saw that. And so having what you said, that neutral party, I think can be really, this is a really important part of, can I turn to somebody who doesn't have any emotional skin in this game, who doesn't have sides, and who has their prefrontal cortex in a logical place
Online.
online, and they can hear it and be like, "MaryAnn, you're kind of being a dork there. Like, slow it down. And did you hear what you said? It sounds like you got some surrendering to do. It sounds like you need to slow this down and think this through because sometimes we need somebody to give it to us straight and help us understand you got some stinking thinking going on there."
And even then, we might not agree with them because they hurt me. Can't you see?
Mhm.
So I think really important here is we have to have that person who is neutral. And that's a whole different concept of how we find people who can be that for us. Because if everything we're getting from the people we're sharing with is, "Oh, what a jerk," or, just, I mean, I can't believe you're still married. If that's what we're getting, MaryAnn, then outside people are influencing and we're influencing them. And we get in this vicious cycle that can be very hurtful and painful.
So we need to make sure that we're picking people who have our best interest. I'll say that again. We need to pick people to be our support people who have our best interest and who
Yeah.
can maybe who have a long view versus.
If we're going to reach out and get other people involved. The other part of that is the work I do when I'm alone. So I think I have a whole formula for this, MaryAnn.
Sorry, before we move on, I want to add one more part that I think is super important right here. For me, I know that I'm a verbal processor, and for me, I need to say things out loud. I do usually need somebody that I can even just say, "I need to say some words to you. I need to get this out." Say the
Mm.
words. I've got to honor the emotions that are going on inside of me, which means I need to say, "I'm feeling angry. I'm feeling frustrated. I'm feeling unheard." All my anger needs to be moved out so that I can get to the pain that's underneath. I can't get underneath until I get that out. And so I've got to find places. And that might be through writing. And I know we're going to talk about that, some of that in a minute, but sometimes for me, it's got to come out verbally. The energy got to come out. The emotions need to come.
Yes, that's exactly where I'm headed, right? You're saying I may need to speak with somebody, or I might need to just say it out loud and
Mhm.
hear myself say it.
Yep.
And that's where I think the journaling comes in the self awareness, because now I want to get the recognition of what's just happening here. Like, why am I responding this way to what happened? See, because that question all by itself begs the question, what am I? Why is this so intense? What's it triggering inside of me? That is self-awareness. That is a mature way to analyze yourself. What's happening here? A curiosity and interest. And that's where I see so many times people aren't able to do that. And so I'm getting a bigger gun. Instead, I need to be reflecting personal insight. I can't believe how triggered that was. I was so triggered by that. Now I'm curious about the trigger. Well, wow, why did I respond that way?
I'm so glad you said reflective right there because I was like, this is where we reflective listen ourselves.
Yeah.
Boy, MaryAnn, you sure came out. That was so triggering for you. You had wow, what? Oh, hold on a second. I hit shame. My cheeks get red, my neck gets scarlet, my stomach drops, and my head starts to spin. Holy cow. I hit shame. Ooh, what was I feeling shame about? What and then I can really walk myself through that. But boy, I really have to, like, that reflective listening, what's going on inside of me. And when we do that, it's almost like we're stepping away from ourselves and we're looking back and we're looking going like, whoa, did you just see that? Watching ourselves like a movie. And then we can really slow down and start making sense.
And if you do that part right, you're going to be way more aware. You're going to understand your thoughts, your feelings, and that's what you ultimately want to be able to communicate with your spouse or partner.
Yeah.
Right?
And
Boy, when that happened, I was so triggered. Wow, that trigger, boy, and all of a sudden my emotions were taken off and I was feeling the hurt. And when I really think about it, it reminds me of something that happened earlier in our marriage when I felt like you didn't care. And when you said that, it hit home with me. And I'm like, oh, there's more evidence that they don't care. And I don't know if that's what you were trying to communicate, but boy, that's what I just came up with me in my reflection.
another way you can add on to that, you didn't say these words, but you were doing it, Dr. Skinner, is looking at it through parts. We add on
Mm.
this part language. There's a part of me that really reacted. I really had this big reaction. That brings in a lot of self-compassion if I can be compassionate towards myself. Wow, I had a really big reaction to that. There was a part of me that really hurt so bad, and that part of me just wanted to fight. And that part of me, oh, I can trace. And so a tool for me is to say, where have I felt this before? And I'll close my eyes and I'll go, here's what the sensation is. Where have I felt this before in my life? And then I can trace back. Oh, yeah, earlier in our marriage, I felt that. For me, I'll even take it a step further than that and I'll say, is what am I telling myself? What's the story I'm telling myself about this?
Yeah.
And is it true? Because most of the
Yeah.
time, the story that I'm telling myself, it may or may not be true. And it probably ties into something. And if I can take kind of that third person standing back, looking through parts, I can usually find the lie that I've told myself or the perception that maybe a little bit faulty. No, he's not my enemy. No, it
Mm.
wasn't this. But yeah, it felt like that. And so I reacted this way. And then I can be a lot kinder and show up
Yes.
and say, a part of me reacted when you said that. And this is why.
Yeah. And when that happens in a relationship, I'm not attacking you. I'm acknowledging where I was at, what I was feeling, and what I was thinking. That's a very important distinction here, because more often than not, it's our response rather than our self-awareness. When we communicate our self-awareness, I was feeling, I was experiencing, so much more effective communication, so much better. Now, the next step in this is the most difficult one. It's to ask the question, I wonder what my spouse was thinking.
So you're saying this is something you do in this timeout space.
If you can do this part of it, not from a defensive or angry position, you're now leaning into more of an empathic approach to this whole experience together. So if you've gone through your own work and now you turn and say, I wonder what they were experiencing, what they were going through, what were they feeling? And try to imagine yourself in their shoes. Which again, this is a concept I teach in my intensive. So you guys are getting a lot in this podcast, right? I teach this concept in my intensive because it's where we lean into a place of empathy. Then I'm not going to come with my guns ablazing. I'm going to come from a soft space. I'm going to come from a space where I'm intentionally trying to understand you. And that's something that does not happen in the heat of a battle. It's way more effective. So, yes, we're trying to increase the level of understanding of our spouse in that situation, empathy.
I have something I want to add to that. I just read this today. It's in a book on moral righteousness. I just started it, but I pulled out this quote. It's from somebody named Truell. It's talking about children learning what's right and what's wrong and how they do that. It says most morally advanced kids, according to some research, were those who had frequent opportunities for role taking, for putting themselves into another person's shoes and looking at a problem from that person's perspective. In relationships such as peers, invite role taking, but hierarchical relationships, such as with teachers and parents, do not. It's really hard for a child to see things from the teacher's point of view because the child has never been a teacher. And I think that really applies with what we're talking about. It's really hard to get to understand our partner if we can't take a moment to say, let me try and put myself in their shoes and see what they were experiencing from my tone, from my language, from how I showed up, from my body language.
When I have done this, when there has been betrayal, I've had some people say, I don't want to feel what they're feeling. I don't care.
Yeah.
Sometimes I think that's the honest response. At this moment, I don't care. I want them to understand me first, is really what they're saying. I want to feel validated in my pain. I want them to understand my pain. And so I understand that pushback. It makes tons of sense to me. As we go through the process, if both partners can get to that point during a timeout where they're reflecting on what their spouse is experiencing, the conversation, I may come up with nothing. I'm like, I don't understand what they're thinking. Great. Then when you get back together, which is the next step, I'll share, here's some of the things that I learned while I was doing some self-reflection, while I was exploring myself. I started thinking about what you were going through and I hit a wall. So could you share with me what your experience was in that interaction? Even there, I send a message. I was trying to think about what you are experiencing. This is so effective when it's done right, MaryAnn.
So here's the tricky part. I'll often have clients who want their partner to suffer. They want them to feel the pain. You hurt me so badly. I need you to feel just as miserable. I need you to know my pain. And once you've hit this level where you felt it, then maybe I can let up. Then maybe I'll feel like validated in that. Here's the lie or the myth. They will never feel your pain. They won't, because it's yours, because you own it. If you have your hand slammed in a car door and I have my hand slammed in a car door, I don't feel your pain. I can relate to it, but I know what it feels like for me. And and no matter how much you want to tell me it hurts, if I haven't slammed my hand in a car door, I don't know what that feels like. And so I need to figure out, how can I come be with you, hold your pain in my hands, hold your tears and all of your pain and sit with you in it, because I can't take it away. I can't feel it for you. I can't pay for it. There's nothing I can do to extract your pain or to apply it to myself. It feels really futile, and it feels futile for both parties. I want to fix your pain, and you want me to feel the pain that I've caused you. And we both get stuck there because we can't transfer the pain. But we have to figure out how to meet with the pain that I have experienced in my life. Have I been betrayed in my life? Maybe I need to start thinking about that and trying to understand what it might feel like, or trying to say, if I were in your shoes, what would that have been like for me?
So that's it right there. What would it be like being my spouse in this situation, in this conflict with me? And these are the types of questions that go a long ways. Notice the self-reflection, the self-awareness. This is higher cognitive reasoning, cognitive processing. That's the gift of our prefrontal cortex, MaryAnn.
But we can't use it if we're triggered. I want to make sure before we go any further, I want to backtrack just a little bit, because to get our prefrontal cortex online, it's not really online when we're in fight or flight. So if we're taking that step away and we're trying to be introspective, we need some tools. We might need some music. We might need to go do some movement. We might need a walk. We might need some bilateral stimulation. We might need a punching bag. We might need some scents, some aromatherapy. We got to think about our senses and figure out, how do I get back to the present regulation? We've got to pull in our senses and ground ourselves so that we can get that prefrontal cortex back online so we can do this work. Because once again, we might not have a template for it and we might be in that frozen space. So we've got to slowly come back and go, how do I get myself back into a space where I'm thinking clearly and objectively and I can do this work?
And that's why we talk about going into a timeout. Because again, if you're trying to do that on the fly with your partner or spouse when you're agitated, the probability of success is just so minuscule. But if I go do that work in advance, coming to this communication to have that conversation, way more effective.
Yeah.
But that's the work that's required if you're going to succeed, folks. That's what I'm trying to say.
So I think if we were to sum that up, what you're saying is proper preparation. That's a pain. I wasn't going to go there. It just came out. What I was going to say is this is work of self-awareness. This work, if I'm not aware of what's going on with myself, if I'm not regulating my emotions and understanding and questioning what's going on for me and being able to be vulnerable with it, I've got to be aware.
So when we do intensives, this is what I role play with couples over and over. So I'll give them the education that we've just been through in the last 2 episodes, and then we'll role play. We'll go into situations. What do I say here? How do I do this? Because again, I don't believe that our natural instincts are to do it this way. And I believe that we want to, but we don't know how to.
Mhm.
And so really practicing, this is a healthy communication is an art. It's practiced. It's not natural. It takes practice over time. And if you think otherwise, I'm telling you, you just need to prepare. And that's really one of the core messages I hope we're getting across.
I have so many clients who will say, I was doing that, and then my partner said, don't therapize me. Stop trying to talk like a therapist. And that's a pretty normal reaction because, like you said, it's not natural. But these are tools that can help you get through that you probably didn't learn when you were growing up. Because we're not, they're not innate. They're not born. We've got to learn them and we've got to practice them. And they're like muscles. And they do feel awkward.
So let's go to this final step for today.
Okay.
Now we're back together. We've taken the time out. We've done that self reflection. We've tried to feel our partner's experience in that exchange. First, one person's going to go. They're going to start off by, hey, here's what I recognize was happening inside of me. No, notice this. What was happening inside of me as we were trying to communicate? They would share what they're experiencing. And then the next part of that is, and I was wondering if I were you, what it would be like. And I was wondering if you were feeling or thinking, am I close or am I not close?
I love that. That, like, here's what I thought was happening for you. Was this your experience? That is so beautiful because it's gold. Because it tells my partner, I'm trying to understand you. I'm trying to understand what it felt like for you. And if I ask that, my partner's going to say, yeah. And they're going to go deeper and say, yes, yes, it was. And they usually add on to that, or they'll say, no, it wasn't. It was XYZ. And so that question is so powerful because it opens a door for our partner to explain. And
I can also see it going the other way. No, look, I know you tried, but you're wrong.
no,
Right
no, no.
now, I'm already not in this space
Oh,
because now I've just said no. So I need to validate their effort. Thanks for trying to understand what I was experiencing. It was actually this. Now, just notice that difference in those two responses.
so that first response, you're still defensive.
Yeah.
You're still pretty. And that might be where we say, hold on a second, that might be a reflective listening place then. Oh, wow. You're still really upset about this. I can see, or that you're feeling
Yes.
that felt like it didn't hit home for you. And there's still a lot of emotions there. Help me understand that.
Yes. And then the next part of this is then once we feel like one person's done, then the other person goes and does the same thing. I was experiencing this. I wonder what you were feeling, what you were thinking, and this is what I came up with.
Let me ask Dr. Skinner, you're sharing that are you sharing that as we're just taking turns and we're not commenting, we're not responding, we're just taking turns?
We're just taking turns initially because I want to understand first. So once one partner gets done, then okay, are we good? That's what you were experiencing. And now I understand what you were feeling based on what you said. And now you're coming with what you came up with during your reflective time.
Can I ask, because I know you're talking about you do this in your intensives, do you have that partner after? So if I were to hear you rather than just jumping into here's where I'm at, would you have me say, okay, here's what I heard you say. Did I get that right? Do you
Yeah.
have that?
So now with reflective listening, with the validation of making sure that I understood right, what you were saying is when I did that, it triggered a belief in you that made you feel like you were unlovable. It goes clear back to when we had this experience earlier in our marriage. Is that right?
Okay.
And
Saying,
boy,
yeah.
I feel so bad about that experience. I look back on it and think I sure wasn't available to you. Now we're finishing a story that hasn't been finished maybe for 20 or 30 years.
Yeah. And that might be a place where you might deepen that as well and say, what do we need to resolve about that? Because
Right.
obviously it's a wound that hasn't healed. It's one of the lumps under the blanket that
That's right.
now we can start to heal and resolve and be aware of because that got triggered in our earlier conversation. And so
That's right.
it needs to be resolved. That's beautiful.
And this process, I mean, we're breaking it down more than I've ever broke it down, not in a therapeutic setting.
Yeah.
So we're not done quite yet because now that the both partners have shared it, now it's a time to step back as observers and look at what just happened. So now the reflection is what just happened between us? How are we feeling? Because now we want to make sure that the Zygarnik effect, that the issue is finished.
Mm-hmm.
Because if the issue is finished, we both are going to feel like, wow, that was really good. I mean, I felt heard, I felt validated, and I hope you felt the same way.
Yeah. As you do that, there's a hesitancy for me that I'm questioning saying, I want to ask, is there more? And I'm all about asking, is there more? Because are we going to go down a whole nother rabbit hole there? What are your thoughts on that?
So for now, the conversation is there may be more, but we can go through the process that we just went through that was successful. Because for me, if you start going into other areas because we just did it right, then we might not be in an emotional space completely where we have the energy to go into another conversation. So, yes, I think this issue, I think we do. Are there other ones? Absolutely. But this was an effective process. Let's duplicate it. Let's replicate it. But
Might be
if you go
even,
into another area, you might like, well, let's go back to the drawing board and let's go on to this new issue. Let's identify what the concern is and let's rinse and repeat this process.
and so I think that might be really helpful to say, yes, we've identified some others and let's schedule some time to come back and talk about them. But let's close this one up because I want to just make sure we're resolved with everything with this
That's right.
one. Is there anything else we need to resolve here? And
That's
now we've gone from this hurricane that we were talking about earlier. We've done a lot of introspection in ourselves. We've come back in a soft place and hopefully at least been able to hear each other. It doesn't mean that even though my partner says, here's where I'm at, doesn't mean that all my pain's necessarily gone.
oh,
Hopefully
for
I can
sure.
hear them. I might still have a lot of work to do. Say, wow, that might have been something that feels unforgivable. And I might have to be working on forgiveness for this for several months. It doesn't mean like, I just want to make sure we're not tying this up in a beautiful bow and here you go. Because there's some reality. This is the conversation, but we might have to say, we're going to need to come back to this. Need to
For
come back
sure.
to this.
But I look forward to it because we did it right.
Yeah.
See, we're so afraid of these difficult conversations, but when we get it right, we should be celebrating it. I mean, let's get out the balloons and say, wow, we did it. Let's celebrate something good. We are so focused on the junk in our lives that we don't stop and take stock of what's positive.
Hmm. And that'd be a really good place to acknowledge and say thank you to our
That's
partner.
right.
I just want to make sure we're touching on this. Think outcome wise, we can have a beautiful outcome and be so grateful that our partner was willing to do this work. We can also have that outcome where it feels like there's still more and we can walk away still feeling like, yeah, it's not quite as great as Dr. Skinner and MaryAnn talked about it being. So
But
recognizing,
the effort,
yeah.
the appreciation, the approach, if done consistently, I guarantee you, the more you practice, the more you implement the principles we've talked about, you will be more effective and you will do it in a way that helps your relationship and you won't feel so hopeless or helpless.
And you talked earlier about the training wheels on the bike. And
That's right.
these are principles that we practice, that we learn. And as you said earlier, these are hard. these are
Yeah.
hard for everybody because in our relationships, we get emotional and we have reactions, and our body wants to bite or run away or defend ourselves, and we don't always understand each other, and we do tread on each other's toes, but it is learning how to repair and I just want to add in here, if we do it right, there's usually this really beautiful space of we can walk away with a lot deeper connection, a lot deeper trust. This is a trust building activity. And also, like, oh, I have more hope. I've got some
That's
hope
right.
that, oh, we did that okay. And so there's hope we can get through hard things in the future because we're learning how to do this. So
Yeah.
it's okay if you don't get it right. There's
Oh,
hope for moving forward.
the way you've been doing it probably hasn't been working. What we're offering is an alternative. Now, again, if you want more, I've written an assessment called Test Your Relationship that really evaluates how couples communicate, and also the course, How to Communicate When You Don't Know What to Say. I've bundled them together. We ought to probably put your boundaries and communication course on there as well. We
Okay.
ought to bundle it up, MaryAnn, and let couples work on these and learn about these things in a bundled package.
That'd be fantastic. So for our listeners or viewers, you can access all of this plus more at humanintimacy.com. This is Dr. Skinner's legacy. This is a place where, our goal is to help as many people as possible. And especially therapy's hard to get into. And for less than the price of a therapy session, you can access most of these courses and get phenomenal tools that you would spend a lot of time and money trying to work through in session. Ideally, for my clients, I invite them to take these courses and then bring the work into session. And so it deepens what we're doing in therapy and just accelerates their progress.
And it reinforces concepts or principles that we've talked about it during the podcast. So absolutely. So again, to our listeners, humanintimacy.com, you can find Test Your Relationship, MaryAnn's Boundaries, also how to communicate when you don't know what to say, and MaryAnn's communication course. Again, those are, we'll put them in a bundle. You'll be able to see it. But if you want more information about it, questions at humanintimacy.com.
Awesome. Thank you all for joining us today. Dr. Skinner, this has been such a lovely conversation and I think really needed. So thank you all for joining us, and we'll see you next time.
Thanks, everybody.
Smile